Daniel writes in, he says Beyond.
Beyond.
After seeing the 10s that GTA 5 has been getting, no surprise there, I began to think of games lately that have been getting 10s. Obviously, they are still relatively rare, but are becoming more and more common. Do you think that as a medium of video games advances... Do you think as the medium of video game advances, perfect 10s will become more and more common, or will standards of a 10 be elevated to an even higher level? Thanks and Beyond, Dan.
I think as you get late in the generation, people know the hardware so well that they can get the most out of it, and you're getting some of the best games we've had in 7-8 years. So I think that's a big part of it. Storytelling and graphics and everything else are just getting so much better than they ever were. So I think it's kind of both, right? Like, I don't think there's a conscious shift where we're going to sit down and be like, okay, the scale for 10s needs to be harder and tougher. Right. But I think at the same time, like, we'll naturally evolve to a point where, like, something like, I can't imagine this happening, but it's like if stories like The Walking Dead were happening all the time, you would obviously have a higher bar, and it would just get harder and harder to reach that point.
Yeah, I think you're nailing it as far as technical. And what it is that it's the industry advancing and growing up, right? And so we are telling more mature things, and we are going in different directions, doing different things. Whether it's mature storytelling or maturing with, the technical aspect of it. Will you see more? I mean, it depends on if the boundaries continue to be pushed and do stuff. But like he keeps saying perfect. We always say this. 10 does not mean perfect. And that, I think, the reason you're seeing more 10s might be the fact that idea is starting to break down, right? What I always talk about it, right? That if I gave Uncharted 3 5 stars out of 5 stars, nobody would give me for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But by giving it a 10, they're like, well, the story didn't make sense here. What was he going to, you know what I mean? Like, that's like, I'm saying that game's something perfect. And that's not what I'm saying. You know what I mean? I'm saying this game is a masterpiece. And if I call a game a masterpiece, nobody gets really mad about that either. It's when you put a score to something that sets this idea to it that really gets weird. And I think that even in the old days of IGN, I remember old school editors when I first started here saying that, like, no game is 10. The 10 should never be given out. A 10 should be unobtainable. And it's like, that sucks. That's a stupid... Why even have it then? Why even have this, like, this thing on a shelf, this pedestal that you can never touch? I never understood that. So I like the idea that you're going to see more 10s if they deserve it. I'm not saying we should start giving them out willy-nilly, but I'm saying that I don't think it should be untouchable by any means.
Yeah, it's this weird thing where, like, you have this full scale available to you, and it's like, if a game is a masterpiece, it deserves to be on the highest end of our scale. Like, that is the point of not using a yes-no system. If we're going to apply scores at all, then you have to be able to say, this game is truly better than everything else, than all of its peers. It could not possibly be better in my eyes. Again, that doesn't mean it's perfect. That still means there can be room for plot holes and all these other things. Like, it just depends on the experience you had, Like, I mean, it is ultimately your review.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world. Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.